Shiro was a pro gamer who gets transported to his favorite game alongside the rest of humanity, where he is the highest ranked player with the most overpowered magic skills. With no way out of this virtual world, his only goal is to use his unlimited powers to defeat the game so that humanity can return to its normal world. After waking up in an abandoned city overgrown with vegetation, Shiro realizes that he is inside of a game and finds a bunch of other players totally confused as well. He finds a menu and tries to log out from the game, but fails before checking his friends list and calls on his old party members named Nao to meet up with him. Shiro touches grass for the first time, which makes him happy, and they start exploring the world to get more information. While walking on a bridge, he spots one of his party members named Akatsuki on top of a building. They meet up and Akatsuki asks Shiro for a plastic surgery potion before transforming into her real form of a small lowly assassin. The next morning, Shiro and the gang meet Mary, one of his friends and leader of a small guild, at her guild building. She informs them that several other guilds are getting ready to exploit this world and other players, and asks Shiro to join her guild since he has experience working alongside the most powerful party in the game. Shiro refuses and tells her that she should not expect the game to be the same as before, as the monsters seem different in this world. After the sun sets, they move into a forest filled with monsters, where after walking for a while they are attacked by a bunch of squirrel monsters. But when Nao tries to fight them, he gets confused by the controls. They get into formation while Nao struggles to block the attacks and shake the beasts off when Shiro gets caught by a monstrous plant that slams him on the ground. But Akatsuki immediately jumps up and slashes the plant, killing it at once. Even Nao finally gets his act together and uses his shield to destroy the monsters, while Shiro uses his magic alongside Nao and Akatsuki's attacks to kill all the monsters in the area. The next day, news gets around that a guy died while fighting, and just like in-game, he was resurrected in the church, which means that you can't leave the game just by dying. Later that evening, they fight against a plant monster as a team, and Shiro binds the monster before Akatsuki ends it with a slash. Later that night, they walk through the forests once again, while Shiro tells them that problems have been brewing in the city as bigger guilds are trying to hurt anyone who refuses to join them, and a lot of fights have been breaking out constantly inside of the city. According to his information, player killings have been on an increase as players attack each other to steal loot and get experience, which is a trashy move, but they can't do anything about it. After entering the city, they send someone up ahead, and suddenly Nao gets bound, but Shiro nullifies it immediately. He sends a light bolt up ahead and is able to spot 4 enemies who seem to be player killers. They all walk towards our heroes ready for a fight, and the battle begins. Nao engages 2 of the enemies at once, blocking their attacks and counterattacking, while the girl tries to attack Shiro, only to get rooted to the ground. One of the swordsmen tries to free her, but Nao uses his special ability, which forces the enemies to attack him. Shiro realizes that Nao wouldn't last much longer as his HP is declining, so he shoots a small electric attack at the enemies, but it takes time to affect them while they push Nao back. Suddenly, they get bound by magic thorns, and Nao uses the time to attack them, causing huge damage. This scares the other enemies, and they shout at the healer to heal them, but it turns out that Shiro already slept him a long time ago, while Nao kills the hammer guy. The girl tries to attack him, but Nao chases and hits her. The sword guy starts calling for reinforcements when Akatsuki arrives from the forest, dragging 2 ugly-ass men, and they all surround the last enemy. The last guy immediately drops to the ground and apologizes, but it turns out to be fake as he attacks Shiro, but is killed immediately by Akatsuki. After that, they relax by a campfire where Nao gets a knee to his face after saying Akatsuki has no plot. Shiro simply sits and plans that they can fight monsters, earn money, and get a good place to sleep, but realizes that this will not be enough to return back to Earth. Before he can think anymore, he gets a call from Mary, who calls him urgently. Shiro the nerd alongside Nao and Akatsuki goes over to the guild, where Mary worriedly tells him about a girl called Sarah who went to a different city, but ended up getting in trouble. Shiro quickly calculates that they will have to travel 400 kilometers to reach the city while fighting against monsters. He asks if she is hiding any information, and finally she reveals that Sarah got saved by some nice players, so now she wants Shiro and his party to go and help Sarah come back. Shiro realizes that this mission would be more than 30 days long and thinks about what could happen when both Akatsuki and Nao say that they want Shiro to accept the quest. Taking inspiration, he agrees to the quest, and at the first light of the day, they get to move on and summon their horses before starting their journey. After riding for half a day, they take a small break while Shiro looks at the map, and soon they have their shitty, tasteless lunch, which they despise. After that, they get ready to continue again, but this time Akatsuki is stopped by Shiro when she tries to summon a horse, while Shiro and Nao use a different whistle, and suddenly a pair of griffins arrive from the sky and land beside them. Akatsuki seems to be scared of them while Shiro sits on f***ing Buckbeak and tells her to hop on as well. She sits behind him and the griffin takes to the sky, flying above the beautiful scenery so they can reach their destination quickly. It's been a couple of days since they started their adventure, but thanks to the griffins they were able to move through the areas very quickly and even reached a mountain with a bunch of dragons nearby. They decided to take some rest and for the safety of griffins move on foot. After that, they reach the great dungeon, which they have to cross in order to reach their destination. They start walking through the ruins, which is much more realistic, when suddenly they spot some rat monsters on the wall that have the ability to spread plague. They move ahead where they come upon even more monsters blocking the path, but instead of fighting, Shiro decides to take an alternate path. After that, they decide to take a break while Shiro checks the map while Nao complains about how bad the food is, as no matter what they do, they cannot make it taste better. While eating, Shiro gets a call from Mary, who is shocked to know that he is already in the ruins. But she informs Shiro that Sarah is still safe as she talked to her through the in-game call feature, and for the time she is hiding with the nice player she mentioned. Meanwhile, Sarah is at the nice player's house doing household work like any woman should do. She cleans the house completely just in time for her savior to arrive, who turns out to be a total furry. He tells her that the condition in this town is still bad as adventurers are bullying weaker players and NPCs breaking their shops. He tells her not to worry and she informs him that the rescue party already reached the ruins, which impresses the pussycat. Back inside the ruins, Shiro and his party move through an old stone bridge over a river when Shiro tells them to stop as the bridge was about to break. But before he could do anything, he ends up falling down into the river and gets knocked out. While unconscious, he remembers how he liked this game because unlike real life, he had friends here who liked him and wanted to make a party with him. He also remembers his old party where he even rizzed up a girl, but suddenly he is woken up by Akatsuki and Nao, who were worried about him. Nao informs him that Akatsuki jumped in to save him and then he had to save both of them. Shiro checks for injuries before they start moving again. They walk through different areas, and while moving through a crystal mine, Akatsuki informs them that she is a college student, which surprises them and now makes fun of her slow plot development, which results in a kick to the face. They start moving once again when suddenly they are transported to a totally different realm, and they spot a huge furball in the air. It turns out to be a giant rat that looks better than me, and Shiro tells them to fight. Nao blocks an attack while Akatsuki lands a strike, while Nao slashes the tail of the rat. Shiro looks for an opportunity, and when Nao gets attacked, Shiro uses a binding spell while the rest of them attack the rat. Ratatouille is still alive and slams Nao to the wall while Shiro uses a stunning spell, saving him while Akatsuki finishes it off with one final slash. They return back to their real life and the ruin ends where they find a beautiful sunset over the sea. Meanwhile, back in the town, a major guild is looting and killing other players without any regrets when one ugly ass member rejects the work and gets yeeted by Wolverine himself. He introduces himself as Demas, the leader of the guild, who tells the others to kill and loot any player they want as it is just a game, while also screaming at them to find Sarah and the pussy boy. Finally, Shiro and his party arrived outside the town where everything seems to be destroyed by the hooligans of the player-killing guild. Shiro decides to go inside of the city directly to meet Sarah at the predetermined spot, but he tells Akatsuki to go undercover in the city to get more information. As soon as they enter the town, both Shiro and Nao are spotted by Demas' goons who are present all around the city while Shiro ignores them and goes inside of a crystal dungeon where he finds Sarah waiting for him. She thanks him for coming while the kitty emerges from behind, who is recognized by Shiro. It turns out that Shiro and the cat, who is known as Chief, are old comrades who used to play together. They all start moving outside while Shiro tells him about Nao and Akatsuki. Shiro asks Chief to come with them back to the main city, and he ends up agreeing, which makes Sarah happy. Akatsuki calls Shiro and informs him that the guild is searching for them throughout the city, which scares Sarah, but Shiro tells her not to worry, and they all simply walk out in the streets. Demas and his goons immediately spot them while Shiro boldly moves through them and tells Sarah not to worry as they can't be attacked inside of the town. He tells her that the enemies will attack them as soon as they are outside the gates of the area. This scares Sarah as the players start grouping around them, slowly waiting for them to step outside, but Chief tells her not to worry as they will take care of it. As soon as they step outside, they find Liver King on a throne surrounded by his cronies while Shiro and Chief both insult Demas, who appears in front of them immediately. Chief confronts him and challenges him to a 1v1 battle, which he tries to avoid, but Shiro makes fun of his ugly purple hair and tells him to get a life, which enrages him, and he agrees to the fight. He immediately jumps and slams the ground while Chief dodges and lands back, taking out his swords. As Sasquatch attacks the pussycat, who blocks the kick and lands back before attacking Demas, who blocks the attacks as well. Demas jumps in for a ground slam before following it up with an electric punch, which Chief dodges before attacking, but Demas teleports and attacks again, only to be blocked again. Chief, however, lost more HP and has to go in for an attack where he damages Demas, who starts realizing his weakness and screams at his party to help him. A bunch of enemies run at Chief, but Nao intervenes and stuns them all. Chief attacks again, but Demas gets healed by the healers, while Nao starts getting overwhelmed. Sarah uses her heal spell on Chief, but it's not strong enough and Demas lands a punch sending Chief into the forest. They clash again and this time Demas dodges the attack and kicks Chief away, while Now is forced to use his ultimate defense which blocks everything for 10 seconds and during that time Sarah heals him. Everything seems to be lost as Chief gets punched again but he lands on his feet and as Demas runs towards him Shiro uses his Thornbind spell while Chief dodges his attacks and uses a massive combo defeating Demas at once. Everyone is shocked to see their ugly leader on the floor and try to attack Chief but Akatsuki arrives behind them and kills them all in a single slash. He realizes that Chief is extremely strong as he was able to hit Demas more than 100 times within a second, completely destroying him, while Now distracted everyone else. Shiro turns towards the survivors and tells them to piss off but Demas gets up again ready to whoop Shiro's ass but ends up getting his shit smacked by Sarah who kills him. Shiro and his party immediately call the Griffin and leave the purging town behind. After traveling for a while, they land to get some rest during the night, and Shiro starts having trouble putting the camp as he has never touched grass before. Meanwhile, Sarah and Chief, who were collecting wood, spot a deer, and Chief decides to try the carnivore diet for a day. Later that night, they finally set the tent up and start eating the trash food when they suddenly smell something and follow it to find Chief having a barbecue like a true American. They think the food will be trash, but take a bite only to find out that it tasted like actual juicy meat as they start devouring it like my ex. They ask how he got tastes in the food and Chief reveals that they have simply been ordering Uber Eats, which tastes trash, and to get good food they have to cook themselves and beat their meat to make it tender. They try to cook, but it immediately burns, but Chief replies that to actually cook it you need to increase your chef abilities and not be an idiot sandwich. Later that night, Chief tells Akatsuki that earlier he and Shiro and Now were in the same party called the Tea Party. Akatsuki makes fun of their beta male party name, but remembers how their rank is very high and they are able to land combos together that she cannot do. The next day, they start traveling again before taking a break by night and eat a bunch of fish that Chief caught while Sarah, who has daddy issues, thinks about babby-trapping him. Later that night while Sarah was sleeping, Shiro remembers a boy and a girl who were new to the game and came up to him for advice, and he even taught them the basics. He is worried about them because of all the player killings going around, but Now tells him not to worry so much. The next day, they start traveling again, but after spotting a bunch of clouds, they decide to take cover. They land in a village, and by the time it starts raining, they find a mansion where they enter without knocking like my parents. An old NPC appears who welcomes them to the village and tells them that they can sleep in the barn for the night if they want, and they happily accept. Later on, they sit on a table when the old man's grandchildren arrive and start playing with Akatsuki. This makes Shiro realize that in this game, even the NPCs have feelings and memories, and unlike the adventurers, if they die once, they will die forever. After that, Chief and Sarah return after a tumble in the weed and show them a bunch of local stuff they bought and decide to make cookies that the kids seem to love. Meanwhile, a tattered group of adventurers walk through the rain and Toya and Mino, the siblings that Shiro taught, are present. Toya supports her sister who is injured while their leader, who is too ugly to show his face, shouts at them to move. Toya tells Mino the KKK enthusiast is so high-leveled he attracts all the monsters, leading into them getting injured every day. They finally reach a barn where they are given just a little bit of food and then sent to fight the next morning once again. After countless days, they finally reach Akiba where the guild organized a huge party for Sarah, while Chief taught the chefs in the guild the secret of cooking. Everyone seems to be happy, but later that night, when everyone fell asleep, Mary tells Shiro that she wants to talk alone. Hoping to finally tap that ass, he agrees, but he ends up getting him tea and starts treating him like a gay best friend as she trauma dumps him. She explains that Akiba has been pretty shit lately even though there are no player killings anymore. She tells him that guilds have been monopolizing the area with their strength and those who are strong enough are taking the best hunting grounds to get levels while shooing the other players off. After that, she tells him that they called a meeting of the smaller guilds so that they can finally embrace communism and create a council. But just like the Soviet Union, it collapsed due to infighting. She also tells him that one of the guilds are trying to reach even higher levels so that they can control the entire area and are fighting very strong monsters in the mountains, while also using XP potions. This shocks him as XP potions are only given to the newer players so that they can get levels more easily in the beginning, but they are being taken away now. This enrages him and he goes out into the night to get girlfriend experience, but he can only imagine them. Chief ends up finding him, and they go over to a cliffside where they talk about their feelings like real men while holding hands, and this reminds Shiro of his days with the old party, which encourages him to contact Mino. He calls her and starts asking whether she is fine and asks whether her XP potions are being taken. After answering, she ends up getting COVID, so he cuts the call while thinking of a plan to save them. The next morning, she was back to Mary's guild and asks them for help, which shocks them. He says that he wants to take down the guild that's capturing new players and stealing their XP potions. He wants to eradicate them from Akiba, and after that he also wants to end all the other guilds that want to monopolize their strength in this area. He tells them that he has also created a guild, which shocks Mary as he hated them before, but she is happy for him and agrees to help. Shiro tells them that money is everything and everyone is a gold digger in this world, so to change everything they will need 5 million gold, which shocks Mary and Henry, who says that they can't get that much money no matter what. The next day they start hunting boars, but Shiro tells them to catch them alive as if they kill it. The meat is very less, but if they catch it, they can get a lot more out of it, so they start catching them. Meanwhile, the entire guild is busy right now working, and most of all, Mary is busy with a lot of paperwork for budget approval, while Akatsuki is tracking enemies as she witnesses 2 guys make a shady deal related to XP potions. Back at the guild, the boys bring back a huge amount of boar while their plan comes into motion as their board gets ready. The next morning, while every player was dreading the tasteless breakfast, Mary and her party set up a food stall while distributing flyers and ends up making a simp buy 1 burger for his girl. The woman tries the burger and ends up loving it, which causes everyone to start buying food while they cry out of happiness. The line becomes longer than YouTube ad, but Chief and the others are whipping out burgers while the rest capture more boars. The food ends up reaching almost everyone in Akiba, and all the bigger guilds start trying to steal the recipe. Meanwhile, Mao and his gang capture a bunch of boars and head back while one young man stays behind to catch more and ends up fighting a boar boss. Back at the guild, Henry calculates their earnings and claims that they earned around 50,000 gold today, but Shiro isn't happy as it will take them 4 months to get 5 million gold. While they were talking, Shiro finally comes back with a huge boar on his back and ends up falling asleep after getting tired. Shiro contacts Mino and tells her to keep faith as he will come to break her out very soon while he goes out with Chief to meet up with one of his former party members, Suji, who started his own guild, which got pretty strong. Shiro tells him that he created a guild as well, shocking Suji, but then tells him that he needs help. He tells Suji that they want to make this world a better place, and he immediately agrees. The next morning, he and his guild start helping with the food stall as well, while Shiro gets ready to start the next stage of his plan. They invite one of the largest guilds that control all of the ingredients for a business deal, and Mary and Henry both sit around a table and ask the leader named Shin to supply the ingredients for diabetes. Henry passes him the price they are willing to pay, but Shin is a businessman and starts haggling when Henry gets up and tells them that the other guilds are also coming to sell their ingredients, which scares Shin, and he ends up making a deal with them to supply them with endless resources. Meanwhile, Mino is being forced to sew leather armor for the guild as she gets sad about her situation while thinking about how she cried when she first got transported to this game. Todia helped her through everything and slowly they started having fun, but soon they ended up being chased and captured by a player killing guild who defeated them and killed them. After that, she woke up in the church where she met Todia, and they were sad as they had nothing anymore. That's when this guild hired them and started their exploitation. Back at the meeting, the leaders of the other merchant guilds arrive, one of them being Brock Lesnar and the other one being mad scientist Hugh and Kuma. They are shocked to see Shin already there and ask Henry why they have been called. Henry replies that they have already made a deal about ingredients with Shin, but they need more than that for the next quest they are going for, which is extremely big. This attracts the attention of all 3 of them as they start thinking about their profits, but Henry tells them that she can't reveal the entire plan now, but they need 5 million gold coins in total for it to work. This shocks everyone, but they think that the profit must be even greater than that. Henry tells them that as a token of faith, their guild is willing to share the secret recipe for all these tasty dishes to them. And then she tells them that they already made 500,000 gold coins and need 4.5 million more. All of them start shouting that they want to invest, while Henry tells them that she will take equal amounts of money from all of them. After that, Shiro sends an invitation for a conference to all the big league players from the major guilds who end up accepting the invite as they all have heard his name in the game, while Shiro contacts Mino and tells her that he will save them tomorrow. The next day, all of the major guilds arrive at the bank building one by one, while the onlookers watch in shock as these are the highest ranking players in all of the world right now. All of the major combat guilds make their entrance, and they all settle down on the round table. Once everyone was settled, Shiro gets up and starts saying that he wants to propose a plan to save Akiba from being destroyed in itself, but a nerd from the largest guild stops him and says that the smaller guilds already had a conference, and a midget agrees that the conference was pretty useless, as they ended up fighting amongst themselves. The long-haired elf gets up and says that he doesn't give a crap about the city, and he only comes here to sell his products and walks outside of the hall. Meanwhile, Mino reveals that last night Shiro told her that he will send Akatsuki at the guild building to protect them, while Nao would be at the church to save anyone over there, and they make the plan of simply running out of the building. Back at the council, Shiro announces that the people present at the council represent all of the players inside of the world right now, and they should make this world a safer place to live as people are being exploited for their XP potions. The black armored guy looks at him and says that it isn't illegal, but Shiro reminds him that there are no laws in this world, and he recently visited a city where the ruling guild was torturing NPCs and the players in that area for their benefit. According to him, they should make some rules, and if anyone disobeys, they can throw them out of the city. The black armored dude tells him that they can't fight against strong combat guilds like themselves, but Shiro tells him to shut up and claims that he has bought the bank building this morning. This totally shocks them, as this means he can decide who can come and who cannot come in the area alongside setting all the rules inside of the building. This means that these huge guilds won't be able to access their money that they put in the bank and won't be able to use the teleportation door, as well as Shiro blacklists them. Meanwhile, Mino and the others finally start escaping, but she ends up getting knocked down by an enemy, but before he could do anything, Toya attacks him on the throat so he can't scream for help. The ninja attacks him, and he defends while pushing the ninja away with Mino's help before running away. Everyone escapes apart from Mino and Toya, who get caught in the leader's dark magic, but Mino uses a defensive magic, and they are somehow able to escape through the door while the enemies are stuck. Just when they thought everything was fine, the leader attacks them and grabs Toya and starts to hurt him, but Akatsuki arrives and frees him before he gets transported to Nao, who captures him easily. Back at the council, Shiro straight up blackmails them into agreeing with him, as otherwise they are basically losing the most basic ability in this game, which will be very harmful for them. He proposes that they make this city safe and create a law for everyone to follow. Mary gets up and reveals the secret behind their food to everyone, which shocks them, while the merchant guilds alongside Shiro explain that they can create anything they want just like in the real world if they have the items required for it. Shiro further says that people are bored because there is nothing to buy or to do in this world, and when the new products start getting released, people will start earning money so that they can spend it, which will resolve this problem. After that, he also makes a rule that player killing should be banned, and even the NPCs should be given equal rights to everything, because unlike in-game, these are real people. The guilds seem to be taken aback, but one by one they agree to the rules. Within a week, the entire place is transformed and looks more like a normal city now, with people having fun and living their lives. Meanwhile, the group that kidnapped players was banished from the city to never return again, and the player ended up joining Mary's guild. After that, Shiro started cleaning a place for his guild as well, where Shin visits him and advises to hire the NPCs to work instead of players, but Shiro doesn't feel good about it. Suddenly, Mary and Suji arrive at the new guild house and are surprised to see it already completed, but Shiro tells them that the merchant guild created everything, while Isaac from the combat guild helped them clean everything. Later that evening, Chief goes out to get some groceries but finds Toya and Mino standing outside, who claim that they haven't joined Mary's guild, as they want to work with Shiro himself as he helped them so much. Shiro seems to be unsure about this, but agrees to let them join his guild before having dinner under the night sky. The city is looking livelier than ever, while Toya and Mino are being trained in the jungle to fight against plant monsters. Mino is becoming better at giving support, while Akatsuki and Nao finish the monsters off. Afterwards, while eating, Nao explains that Akatsuki is an emo teen playing at being edgy, which gets him a kick to the face. Later that day, Shiro and the rest are called by Mary, as for once this bimbo has a good plan and wants to organize a camp for the lower level players so that they can become better at the game, while also wanting to have a vacation from all the work. The word is quickly spread in the entire region, while Toya practices at night to get better. The next morning, while Shiro was planning the camp, he gets information that a bunch of weird men are approaching the city. They go out to meet them, while all the NPCs bow down as the leader of the group announces that he is here on the behalf of the king of Eastal and wants to meet with the leaders of the council. Both the nerd and Shiro meet up with the man who invites them to a dance at the royal capital before heading back. After that, Shiro talks to the nerd and says that he is worried about getting involved in their politics, but assures him that they don't need to worry about a war because they are much stronger. The next day, they all set out for their own missions, as half of them go through the countryside with all the newbies to an abandoned school where the training camp is being held, while Shiro and the others, as decided by the council, are going to Eastal to meet the king. Shiro seems to be worried that the NPCs might be more powerful than before and sent Mary with Mino to investigate whatever they can, but the bimbo seems to be enjoying her vacation more. After 2 hours, Shiro and his party reach the ice palace, where they finally enter, and by the time night falls, the celebrations begin. Soon the king comes down to meet with them, and Shiro freezes like a total loser while the nerd speaks up, and they end up having a conversation as the king wants to know more about how Akiba works. Just then, the Princess Lane arrives, and like a bunch of insoles, all of them start staring at her. Meanwhile, back at the camp, Nao announces that tomorrow the newbies will be undertaking their first dungeon all on their own, which scares them a little. Dungeons usually have easy monsters, but many strong monsters guard the treasure there, and because of the small area, it's very difficult to fight against them. Meanwhile, the dance begins in the castle, and the king asks whether Shiro would like to join, and even though he hesitates, Henry, the closeted freak, ends up making him dance with her in front of everyone. After the dance, Shiro sits down on a couch completely exhausted, but Mino calls him and tells him about their dungeon plan, but Shiro tells her to stop crying like a little girl before Mino calls him sexist and hangs up the phone. The next morning, Shiro sits down with his party to have some amazing breakfast and starts discussing the politics and play. He He explains that the NPCs have a majority and they now understand the power of players and their worlds, so soon they will try to form alliances with them to grab power for themselves. This could be problematic as they might try to bribe some guilds, which can result in war, so Shiro sends Akatsuki to do some investigations. Meanwhile, at the training camp, Chief takes them up near a forest and divides them into teams before leaving them alone, just like my dad did. Toya and Mino end up making a team with Sarah, Isuzu, and a pompous bastard named Rudy, who thinks he is too strong. Rudy ends up becoming friends with Toya, who is equally as brainless, and both of these idiots lead them to the dungeon where they get stopped by Nao, who tells Toya to simply beat the tank and not do anything stupid, while Chief encourages Mino to be confident. They enter the dungeon and start walking through the darkness, which makes the girls very scared as expected by them, but Rudy uses his massive staff to create some light balls, and following his lead, Sarah creates some light as well. They start walking once again and see a bunch of skeletons before reaching 2 entrances. They take one of them, and while walking, Mino realizes Rudy is totally brain dead, and she will need to save him, when suddenly Toya tells them to stop as he spots 3 skeletons, but Rudy ends up making a noise. Toya immediately runs ahead and uses magic, forcing the skeletons to attack, and then uses a super slash attack to hit them, but ends up getting hit by the last enemy. Mino uses a shield while Sarah uses her healing spell on Toya while he engages in combat, when Rudy takes out his staff and sends a fireball, which hits all of the skeletons before shooting another blast with the Suju's help, which kills the last one as well. While he was celebrating, he accidentally ends up catching an arrow, and they look to spot a Minecraft skeleton with a bow. Toya immediately runs towards it only to find more skeletons waiting for him. Mino tries to support while Toya fights, and Rudy helps him with his magic. This angers the skeletons, who run towards Rudy to make some Caesar salad, and he falls back getting attacked while his AP falls low. In a truly pathetic fashion, they end up running away from the dungeon. Meanwhile, the nerd spots the princess is alone and decides to raise her up. He starts talking to her, but the princess has dealt with many losers like him and doesn't give him the time of the day before moving away to get her self-portrait done. After that, while walking through the halls, she hears some noise and spots the nerd having a sparring session with the soldiers, but easily defeats them. The princess sits on the chair while they watch the matches when Nerd announces that whoever wins the competition will get to have tea with the princess, which excites everyone. Crowd gathers in the arena as Nerd takes on a big fat whale before defeating him. Everyone claps, but the princess still isn't impressed. Meanwhile, Toya and the rest run across the bridge and find a room in which they lock themselves in. They sit down for some rest, but Rudy starts trash talking them, claiming that the healers are being dumb, but Toya shuts him up and tells him that he is a total noob who doesn't know how to play Heather. On the beach, Mary is having the time of her life as Sho. Her simp is catching giant crabs while the newbies fight them so that they can make crab stew, while Chief and Nao are having a bro session while camping out. Back at the castle, the leader of the merchant guild is invited to a dinner where the lord tells him that they are willing to provide more raw materials, but the monsters attack them on land, so they ask the merchant to create a ship for them. Meanwhile, Nerd takes the princess up to a balcony where he starts getting hounded by a bunch of stupid girls who will definitely model for OnlyFans. He somehow sends them a wig before telling the princess that he's a man of culture who appreciates a pair of good juicy thighs, and tells her that she reminds him of his sister, revealing that he is from Alabama and wants to help her when she gets stuck as well. On the other side, Shiro spots Akatsuki running around like an idiot and sits down to talk when suddenly they feel a dangerous presence as a creepy hooded man appears who introduces himself as Regan the Mage. Shiro takes him inside the library alongside Akatsuki and roofies him while the mage asks about Shiro's magical bag, which surprises him as only high-level adventurers know about it. Regal notices this and explains that he's a magic scientist who is severely underpaid like any other scientist, and explains that he is known as the Mage of Merrill Lake. Shiro immediately recognizes the name and tells Akatsuki that the Mage of Merrill Lake is a big myth inside of the game, but he never thought they actually existed. Shiro gets pretty excited as this guy can answer a lot of questions he has. The mage starts talking and tells them that he is studying world-class magic, which even Shiro seems to be unaware of, so Regan explains there are 8 different types of magical abilities that let you attack one enemy, a group of enemies, several group of enemies, etc., and then there are basically nukes where you can destroy an entire castle or an army, even a continent, and in them the strongest is world-class magic, which can destroy the entire world. Shiro doubts that such magic exists, but Regan reveals that it does and has been used 3 times before through a spell called World Fraction. Shiro gets immediately interested and asks him about the times when this magic was used earlier. Meanwhile, Toya and his party are sitting around a campfire brooding over their failed attempts at clearing the dungeons and want to go in again, even while tired, but Nao laughs at them for running like a bitch, but tells them to get some rest before going in again. They all get inside their tents, and while Toya thinks about their strategy, Mino goes over the notes given to her by Shiro. Back at the library, Regan starts his story by telling that 300 years ago, the world used to be much more advanced and peaceful, and was controlled by humans, elves, dwarves, and owls who were special mages. The owls were the lowest in number, who controlled all of the monopoly when it came to magical inventions which annoyed the other races. Since no one started #OwlsLivesMatter, the other 3 races ended up destroying them and the remainder were used as slaves. Due to this massacre, 6 ghosts were born who started a war to take revenge on the other races but were getting defeated because they were outnumbered, and that's when they decided to copy America and drop the nuke that almost destroyed the world, and through the remains, monsters were born. Due to wars, a lot of people died and their souls ended up becoming these monsters who started pushing humanity to the brink of extinction. Due to this, humanity decided to learn magic, and they created a bunch of demi-humans themselves who were stronger, and they fought against the monsters. Alongside that, precursors were also created that are NPCs according to Shiro, but strong enough to fight an adventurer. Regan continued that the enemies kept reincarnating for some reason, which became a problem, and Shiro realizes that he is talking about respawns, like when you kill enemies they disappear from that area for some time, but they respawn once again so that other players can defeat them. After that, Regan tells them that due to this problem, the war was endless between humanity and monsters, and that's when the Second World Fraction was used, and that's when adventurers appear for the first time ever. He also claims that Shiro's name became pretty famous almost immediately, and he knew that even Shiro's a mage, and that's why he wanted to talk to him among the other councilmen. Shiro realizes that the timescale matches as Shiro started playing the game at that time only, and when the game was launched, that's when the Second World Fraction happened. Regan speaks up and says that he has been researching on HP and MP recently, and found out that if a person dies, their soul gets released in the air, but a powerful mage can use resurrection magic, which binds the soul back into the body and the player comes back to life. The main problem is that the player will lose a certain amount of experience points, or in other words, their memories. This means that whenever a player gets reincarnated at the church, they lose some of their memories without knowing about it. The next morning, Shiro seems to be worried as he walks alongside Akatsuki and explains that no one knows about the memory loss mechanic once you die right now, and to not create a panic, they should keep it a secret for the time being, and Akatsuki agrees. Back in the jungle, Mino wakes up and checks inventory, while Isuzu also gets up and claims that she couldn't sleep last night before going off for a bath in the lake. Toya also wakes up grumpy and simply walks into the woods to take a piss. While walking through the forest, Isuzu notices Rudy practicing in the woods by himself, but as soon as he notices her, he starts acting as if he was just roaming around. She invites him to breakfast, which fries his insult brain, but she tells him that it's not a date, and he agrees before walking back. Back at the camp, it starts raining, but they have good hot food, which everyone seems to be enjoying apart from Toya, who looks worried. Suddenly, Rudy gets up and says that they should head back inside the dungeon, but Mino bitch slaps herself to get motivation and says that they are not ready yet to take on the dungeon. Everyone looks at Mino while she tells them that they should wait till the afternoon. Rudy cuts her off and says that she should go back to the kitchen as the men are here to get more levels and experience as soon as possible, but Mino makes fun of him for running like a bitch in the dungeons whenever they get attacked. Rudy asks what she wants to do, and Mino replies that they should put on some face masks and relax for a bit. Rudy gets mad at this as he thinks he is straight, but Isuzu tells him that he can't know for sure before trying some sausage for himself. Mino tells them that she can't create a strategy as she doesn't know anything about them or their abilities. She needs to know whether a player is comfortable playing from behind cover or if they want to rush the enemy, so he requests everyone to tell her what they want. Rudy starts by saying that he likes using his fireball the most as it is very powerful and he can use it every 10 seconds, while Mino writes it down. This gets Toya thinking, and he tells them that his taunt ability provokes the enemies to attack him as they think Toya is calling them a bitch, and they rush to attack him. The problem is that before his taunt can reach them, Rudy's fireball hits them, which makes them attack Rudy instead. Mino notes it all down, and their failures start making more sense, which makes them happy, and they start disclosing all of their abilities one by one. The next day, they go inside the dungeons again and spot a bunch of skeletons walking ahead. They are better prepared this time and get into position as Toya runs ahead and uses his taunt skill, which makes all of the enemies chase after him while the others stay hidden. Isuzu isolates one of the skeletons and alongside Mino attacks it, but Mino gets knocked down. Rudy arrives just in time and blocks the arrow, and instead of using his fireball, he uses his lightning magic and kills the skeleton. Meanwhile, Toya is dealing with 4 enemies at once and starts taking a bunch of damage and gets low on HP. Thankfully, Sarah is in position and heals him immediately back top full health while he defends himself. This gives him an edge as he remembers Neo telling him to always be a man of culture who likes thighs. For the love of juicy thighs, he taunts again and hits 2 enemies before blocking the attack and tells the others to get ready for the offense. They all get into position while Toya keeps taunting the enemies, and Isuzu starts using her sound attack while Rudy uses his fireball to finally hit all of the enemies before freezing them all, which ends up destroying them completely. They stay alert and walk near the edge of the dungeon door where they realize that they have completed this level and start celebrating their hard-earned victory. Later that night, Shiro is busy at the castle writing things down and getting paperwork ready, while also being worried about the fact that they can lose their memories if they die. While working, he ends up getting a call from Mino, who tells him that they were able to complete the dungeon quest and would go inside one last time tomorrow. Shiro congratulates her and asks for the details of everyone's performance, which she has noted down like a total nerd. The next day, disaster strikes at the beach as Shiro and his party run towards it, as Mary just told them that fish monsters are attacking the beach. He arrives at the beach to find an insane number of these monsters jumping up from the sea and landing on the beach with weapons causing mayhem. Everyone starts fighting while Mary tells them to run away but gets attacked as well. The fishes surround her, but Shiro arrives just in time and engages them before telling her to run into the forest while he fights against the beast. Mary runs away while Shiro jumps in alone to make some fresh sushi. The experienced players try to kill as many of them as possible, but they are also getting surrounded while trying to buy time for the newbies to reach the safe zone. Meanwhile, even Now and the others were fighting against a bunch of goblins inside the jungle while Chief flies to get an idea of what's happening. He gets down back to the camp and informs them that he saw an army of thousands of goblins alongside trolls and other big monsters walking through the forest towards the kingdom of Isekai'd. They all try to get in touch with Mary and the others, but they can't, so Now contacts Shiro and tells him the deets. Shiro immediately calls a conference of the people in the council on Google Meet and tells them that today monsters have attacked in very large numbers at the beach and inside of the forest. He informs them that according to the chief, he has seen an army of at least 10,000 goblins marching ahead, but there could be much more than that. Tsuji asks what could be the cause of this, and Shiro replies that he thinks a new goblin king has been crowned. He explains that there is a goblin castle deep inside the forest, and 2 times a year a new goblin is crowned there, while the job of the adventurers is to slay the goblins before the king could be crowned. This time the adventurers were busy killing each other and trying to form dictatorships, and that's why no one cared about stopping the goblins, and because of that, the new king must have been crowned, who is uniting the monster races to create a huge army and attack humanity. Mary claims that he thinks Akiba has enough adventurers that they can take care of this problem, but Shiro tells him that the problem is the Isekai'd lords, as they are not strong enough. Henry interrupts in between and claims that this is the time when the NPC heroes should come and save these lords, but Shiro says that they don't even know whether they exist in this world now or not. By the time evening falls, Mary's group and Nao's group ends up uniting, while he tells Mary not to worry, as Shiro will find some way out of this mess, and she goes to change. When she comes back, Nao suddenly starts putting out the fire as they notice a bunch of torches in the mountains as a raiding division of the goblins seems to be coming towards them. They get a map and huddle around the campfire while Chief tells them that they seem to be safe for now, as this is just a smaller raiding party who is going to attack the nearby village and loot as much food as possible. Mino claims that the village has no defenses and will easily get destroyed by these goblins, and both Toya and Rudy support the notion that they should fight, while Isuzu tells them to shut up as their weaknesses can't defeat these goblins. Mino thinks about the kindness the villagers have shown and begs Nao to let them help the village. Meanwhile, Shiro gathers everyone at the table and informs that he has called Tsuji to bring his forces to meet up with Mary and Nao so that they can make their way to Isekai'd. Shiro also tells them that he knows something about death in this world and explains that unlike while they were playing the game, now the death comes with a penalty as they lose their memories every time they die. This shakes up the merchant leader, who asks Shiro for more details about what kind of memories and how much memory is lost, but Shiro has no idea himself. Suddenly Nerd speaks up and claims that he has died twice while fighting demons during the early days when he was transported here, and he lost some memories as well but thought it was a coincidence. Shiro gets interested and asks what kind of memories did he lose, and he replies that both of the times he lost some memories from the real world, but because he never saw the sun in real life anyways, most of them were just useless. Meanwhile, Mary refuses Toya and his party to defend the village as it is too dangerous, and tells them to wait while Shiro decides the best way forward. Rudy says that he is not Shiro's little bitch and he will go to the village regardless, but Isuzu tells him that he will get his ass handed to him if he goes alone. Mino ends up speaking up and asks Mary to let them go and evacuate the village at least, and Mary agrees to this request. They walk through the forest towards the village while Mino tells them that she lied and will defend the village instead of simply evacuating it, and they suddenly spot a bunch of smoke coming from the village's direction. They enter the village only to find it completely burnt and destroyed, just like my heart, and while searching for survivors, Toya notices a pair of goblins playing with a doll, which angers him as men don't play with dolls, so he rushes at them alone and starts fighting, while Rudy runs behind and assists him with magic, killing a goblin, while Toya deals with the other. After that, Rudy starts arguing with Isuzu that they need to protect the rest, while Toya buries the doll so no one could find it. A few moments later, Nao and the others also arrive, and Minto tells them that she has a plan and wants them all to hear it. She claims that they can't defend all the villages like this, so they should change their strategy and attack the goblins themselves instead. Mino uses her magic to see into the night, while Nao contacts the rest and informs them that they have decided to take the initiative and will be attacking the goblins instead, as they are not protecting their backs as they have no training, so doing that will be easy, plus Chief and him will be there to protect the noobs if required. Mino looks through her telescope and finds out that Toya has provoked a bunch of goblins and is now running towards them. So everyone takes their positions, and as soon as they emerge from the bushes, Sarah uses her root spell to bind them while Rudy creates an icy sword for Toya, who uses it and demolishes the gobs, while two other goblins run at them from behind, but Rudy uses his fire magic to weaken them, and then alongside Asuju uses a massive attack to destroy them at once. Back at the palace, Shiro talks to Brock Lesnar and Nerd and tells them that they will most likely have to get involved in this war, as the lords of Eastal would want the adventurers to go and fight against the goblins, as they are basically immortal. Before they can decide anything, they are called for a meeting by the king and the lords, so they make their way towards the meeting hall. Meanwhile, Mino and the others sit around a campfire discussing their strategy while Rudy cleans the magic gauntlets that they found recently, which can only be used by a mage, so the party decided to give it to him. Mino gets up again and tells them to start moving as they have even more goblins to kill, and they proceed inside the jungle again. Back at the meeting, the lords are speaking the same old diplomatic things again and again, so Shiro cuts to the chase and asks about the status of the legendary heroes. One of the lords claims that they don't want to disturb them for such a small war, so the adventurers and Akiba should deal with it. Another lord speaks up and says that they know Akiba has a huge army, but Shiro corrects him that they don't have a standing army ready to fight, as they are all adventurers and are free to do whatever they want. One of the lords gets up before shouting at them for being cowards, as they are so strong but still are not willing to fight against the goblins, and Eve, if they die, it doesn't matter as they can just get revived. This truly angers Brock, who punches the table, breaking it, and screams at the lord to shut up, as they are not his pets, nor do they work for Eastal, so they are not obligated to help them whatsoever. All of the lords shut up, but one ugly ass Baldy speaks up saying that they are super strong, so it should be easy for them to beat the goblins, but Brock tells them to shove it, as the adventurers from Akiba will never trust or help Eastal this way. Before they could talk further, the princess herself arrives inside of the room and decides that she wants to show how much of a girl boss she is. She looks at the nerd and tells him that she wants him to take her to Akiba, while all the lords wonder whether there is a new shopping complex there. Princess elaborates that the adventurers are free people, so she wants to go there and show them her respect before asking them to volunteer for this fight against the goblins. She also reveals that the legendary heroes have disappeared and will not join the fight, which angers the lords as they were keeping it a secret, but the king claps his hands and everyone shuts up. The princess continues that they all have been trying to simply use the adventurers as tools, but she will go herself and show them respect, and even if 10 to 15 adventurers agree to fight, it will be a huge help. After finishing her speech, she ends up getting knocked out from all the hard work and sleeps. Back in the forest, Mino and the others walk through the forest and keep getting scared by even birds at night because they are so alert. They all laugh about it before moving forward with the single goal of destroying the goblins. Meanwhile, Nerd takes the princess on a griffin, followed by Shiro alongside Akatsuki, as they make their way back to Akiba. They all finally reach Akiba, and the princess is totally bamboozled to think that a city like this can even exist. There are food stalls all over the roads, people are eating and having fun, while some places performers are dancing and idols are singing, while everyone enjoys the night and parties as much as they want. Nerd tells the princess that Shiro will take her into the city, while he himself goes on to meet with his guild members to inform them of the new information that they have gathered. Shiro takes the princess to a warehouse where they meet up with Shin, who is already informed by Shiro to be ready to receive the princess. He seems to be super impressed, while Shiro takes him towards the clothes room so that they can choose some appropriate clothes for her that doesn't make her look different and gives her the look of an actual warrior. Meanwhile, some kids enter the room. They're happy to see an actual princess and even give her a burger, which she eats. She is surprised at the taste of this meal, as she has never had diabetes in a plate before, but ends up dropping some sauce on her clothes. Thankfully, it doesn't matter, as Shiro is standing nearby to undress her and give her the new clothes that he chose for her. He tells Akatsuki to deal with making the princess pretty, and while doing so, the princess seems to be uncomfortable, as she thinks the clothes should be worn by women that belong on the street, and not the princess, but Akatsuki tells her to shut her royal mouth while she fits the dress just in time for Shiro and Shin to see. After that, Shiro collects all the people in an area and gets on the stage before turning the lights on. He greets them quickly before telling them that they have been collected here to form a decision that might affect their future. He informs them that around 20,000 goblins have banded together and are moving towards any city or village they can see and are destroying it completely. He tells them that the goblins are moving towards Eastal, who will lose approximately 70% of their forces if left alone to deal with the threat. The adventurers immediately start looking at maps and discussing strategies for defending their city and calculating how much resources they will need for such a large-scale invasion. This totally shocks the princess, as she realizes that these people are not dumb soldiers who don't know anything apart from following orders. They are free people who each have a trained brain to deal with these situations, and at the very least, almost all of the players here have the tactical mind of a general, that sits on her war council in Isekai'd. Shiro continues speaking and informs them that Akiba should be safe, and when the goblins come to this area, they can very easily completely decimate them, and considering this, they do not have any real reason to save or help Isekai'd. He explains that they will gain nothing from saving Isekai'd before handing the mech over to the princess to deliver her request. The nerd immediately puts the lights on the princess while she moves forward and seems to be scared of speaking anything in front of so many people, but Nerd tells her that these people have never smelled a girl in real life, so a princess will have their total attention. The princess takes a deep breath and moves forward before introducing herself and informs them that their kingdom is going to get demolished if help is not given because the legendary heroes have disappeared and right now there is no one around who can defend them from this problem. She tells them that Isekai'd would have paid them in gold, but their city is already 100 times richer than Isekai'd, so it is useless, but she promises to snap them a picture of their feet if they are willing to fight for her kingdom. Immediately, the incels start hitting their staff on the ground like total barbarians and start shouting that they want to fight for her and her feet, which totally shocks the princess as she didn't expect the adventurers to simp this hard. Nerd immediately tells them that he will be leading their army and anyone who doesn't kill at least 5 goblins won't receive any feet pics. While Shiro tells them that he will be the strategist and tells them that he will let them know about the plan in some time, and they all disperse from the area. The next morning, they all get ready to move, and it turns out that they were able to gather around 1,200 people in total for now as they can't move more people right now. Shiro gives the nerd a ship with a small force of around 100 people to go to Isekai'd by the sea, while he takes the remaining forces using horses and carriages while informing Brock that they are going to create a headquarters on a forest where monsters are very few. Brock agrees and tells him that he will keep an eye on the nobles before cutting the call. Soon Henry informs him that the king himself wants to talk to them, so they go into a room with the king alone. The king claims that the lords are unhappy that the princess was allowed to leave the house, especially without doing the dishes, and believe that the royal family is under the control of the adventurers. Brock thinks about it and asks the king what he wants to do, and the king replies that he wants them to sign a non-aggression treaty so that none of them can attack the other, while also making a trading pact so that they can increase trade between them, which will help in relations as well as economy. Brock laughs and agrees to the deal and also tells him to be less sexist, otherwise he will trigger the blue-haired girls. Meanwhile, Nerd commandeers the ship near the port of Isekai'd, where people are waiting for their arrival. The princess seems to be worried about the entire situation, especially because she looks like a hussy, but Nerd tells her that they should Netflix and chill. But before the princess can reply, the nerd is called by his vice captain, who tells him that he should disclose the battle formation to the adventurers. Back at the town, Nell and the rest of the adventurers, including the noobs, have successfully defended the nearby towns from the first wave of the goblins, and seem to be very happy about it, while Mary apologizes for not believing in their strength since the beginning and tells them that their job is not done yet and they have to defend many more cities before this whole thing comes to an end. Back at the ship, Nerd finally addresses the adventurers and informs them that they will be divided into 4 groups so that they can move faster and more effectively. The vice captain informs the princess that the nerd is one of the few people among them who has actually commanded a huge army, so he is the best suited for the role, and she also tells her that the nerd is given 12 guards for her protection, but she shouldn't cheat on him and break his heart. The nerd shouts at the adventurers to get ready for battle and tells them to annihilate every single monster that dares come in their way. By the time night falls, they all assemble in the battlegrounds while the vice captain gives a magic potion to the princess, who is able to see the huge force of goblins marching towards them with full force. The mages unleash massive magical attacks that destroy a huge portion of the goblins, which gives Nerd and his foot soldiers an opening to enter the battle. They rush towards the goblin forces, and the nerd jumps in with his giant axe and starts destroying goblins left and right in a single attack while getting support from the mages. He then uses his special attack to destroy a huge chunk of goblins, surprising the princess, who wasn't aware that the nerd was this powerful. Suddenly, 2 giant rock monsters appear near the nerd, but he doesn't get phased and simply orders the mages to blast their magic at them, while he runs towards one of them and jumps up towards its shoulders before delivering a massive cut, destroying the enemy while the princess watches the beastly grin on his face. Back at the headquarters, Shiro has set up a call center through which he is creating and enforcing his strategy so that communication between different units and the headquarters is seamless. Shin thinks that the battle is almost over, but Shiro tells him that there is a problem. When the goblins will be defeated, they will run in different directions, which means that they will attack any villages that come in their way. To prevent that, Shiro has been using his strategy to surround the goblins and then eliminating their forces, but the problem is that the towns on the coast where only a small number of troops are present include Mary and the noobs. If the fish monsters take that town, they can break the formation and create problems. Akatsuki asks why he isn't going in battle himself, but he replies that until all the forces are deployed, he can't leave the headquarters. Back at the coastal town, town, the noobs seem to be pretty worried and nervous about this battle, while Marie looks through her telescope and notices a huge amount of monsters coming out of the sea. She looks around to see Neo giving her the thumbs up to give the order to the noobs so that they can all finish these monsters before they can reach the town. Shiro gets this news that there are only 60 adventurers in the town against 1,000 enemies, so he quickly sends reinforcements. Meanwhile, the battle begins, and at first the noobs seem to be getting overwhelmed by the sheer number of the enemies, and Neo wants to help them, but Chief stops him and tells him to recover his strength and mana first before engaging in battle again. Nao notices that Toya has been going into battle without any fear and defeating multiple enemies at once, while Sarah has been providing support and covered him alongside summoning creatures to help her take down the enemies efficiently and easily. Even Isuzu and Rudy seem to be fighting well as Rudy jumps in the middle and uses a fire spell to demolish the enemies around. While all this is happening, Mino has been keeping an eye on the status of every party member and is also creating strategies. This reminds them of the style that Shiro used, which helped him basically predict what was going to happen 30 seconds later, and even though Mino can't do that yet, she is still trying to imitate it as closely as possible. After defeating the nearby monsters, Mino tells Nao that they are going to attack the goblins now, and even though Nao tries to stop them, they run away. They reach near a field where they spot a number of goblins enjoying some steak, so Mino tells Rudy to provoke them, so he uses his lightning magic, which provokes them all, and they start running towards them, while Isuzu uses her song magic to slow them down, and finally Toya jumps in and starts slashing them to bits, while the rest use their magic to demolish them. Even after killing so many enemies, they hear massive sounds from the beach, so they run back at once. Mary is healing the injured while Shiro calls her and tells her that the reinforcements will reach in an hour and they need to hang on until then. Mary relays the information to the fighters, who are somehow keeping up with the monsters, but the noobs are starting to get tired and Rudy's mana is especially low because of the constant spell usage. Suddenly, as it starts raining, a dire wolf appears from the cliff, and not only that, but a small group of goblins with some more wolves also block their way. They all engage in combat, but are somehow able to deal with the goblins together, but the wolves start running at them. Sarah roots one of the wolves, but the other one dodges and tries to attack Toya, but Mino uses her magic to defend him. She tells Sarah to focus on trapping the wolf, while the rest attack the two goblins in front of them, and together they are able to destroy them. Suddenly, Mino notices that Toya's HP is decreasing and finds him getting attacked, and somehow manages to create a shield in front of him, while Isuzu and Rudy run at the rooted wolf, but it manages to escape and runs past them to attack Toya. Sarah tries to heal him, but he keeps getting hit and is about to die after being completely surrounded, while Mino gets frozen in place, scared that Toya will die. Rudy suddenly becomes the MVP and runs at the wolf and jumps on it barehanded and starts distracting them, while the wolf thrashes him inside of the wall. Toya also gets attacked by a goblin, but blocks while the wolves run away with Rudy, and were about to devour him, but he punches inside its mouth and uses a fire blast to destroy them. Mino and the others immediately rush towards him, only to find him lying on the ground, while Sarah quickly tries to use a revival spell, but it doesn't work. Mino uses an even powerful revival spell, but that doesn't work either. Isuzu collapses on her feet and tells them the truth as they slowly realize that Rudy was never an adventurer, but only a normal NPC who really wanted to become an adventurer, and that's why Isuzu kept it a secret. Toya realizes that this means he cannot be revived no matter what, and while Isuzu cries, Sarah decides to use her healing spell instead, but it doesn't seem to be powerful enough, so Mino immediately calls Shiro and asks him for help. Shiro immediately runs out alongside Akatsuki and gets on a griffin before rushing towards their position. He calls them and tells them to keep using Reviva, spell on Rudy, and use any healing spells they have, as he explains to Akatsuki that even though Rudy's mana is 0, his HP was saved a little bit by immediately resurrection magic, and if his theory is correct, there is a way of resurrecting Rudy. He then gets a call from Mary as she tells him that the reinforcements have arrived and that battle has begun on the sea, and that they should be fine now. Shiro then immediately rushes as fast as he can before dropping down and telling Akatsuki to assist at the beach. He runs into the town and finds Rudy unconscious on the ground while the party uses their healing spells on him. Shiro tells them to add him into the party, and then uses a new magic skill and channels everyone's mana into Rudy, which results in his brain becoming alive again, but he is in a coma state. So he tells all of them to use all their healing abilities, and sure enough, Rudy opens his eyes as everyone cries around him. Shiro immediately takes out a contract and tells Rudy that he is offering him a position at his guild, which will mean that he will become an adventurer as per the contract's terms. This will mean that he will no longer be an NPC, as Shiro realized that he was powerful enough to create documents like this, which can bypass the laws of this game. Rudy manages to sign his name below the contract, and a yellow light starts emitting from him as he floats in the sky, as Shiro tells that he will get reincarnated in the church again. Back at the battlefield, a huge army of direwolves and a hobgoblin approach the army, and the nerd meets him in the valley with his forces, and the goblins are no match for his forces as they absolutely demolish the monsters monsters one by one using arrows and even a fiery bird which blasts them away. Some of them survive, but the nerd is more than happy to deal with them and uses a single slash to end the hobgoblin. With that, the first battle ends both on the beach and in the mainland, giving our heroes some time to rest. It has been a month since the battle, and while Shiro stays locked in his room like the loser he is, the rest are enjoying a lavish party thrown by the king. Shiro has no interest in these formalities as he knows that the battle against the goblins hasn't ended yet and the Goblin King is still somewhere around and hiding, trying to regain his strength. He finally gets out to get some fresh air and notices a woman telling stories to children which reminds him of Regan the creepy mage, so he goes into his library where he seems to know about the magic that he created and used to resurrect an NPC and make him an adventurer. According to him, it is a world-class magic as it can change the way our world works, but also tells him that recently he saw a similar magic beam on the other side of the continent, but he doesn't know who is powerful enough to create it. This scares Shiro a little bit, while Regan also warns him that the Goblin King isn't the only problem, as there are rumors that some more monsters will soon emerge on the other side of this world. Shiro thanks him for the information and goes back to the party where everyone is finally dancing, so even he decides to engage in a dance with Loli, who gets happy by this. The next week, they all return back to Akiba, including the princess who decided to stay in Akiba as the ambassador for Eastal. Shiro also releases the rumors that people lose memory when they die, and in this way there is no panic or chaos created, but it results in the adventurers not trusting Shiro as much. Some months pass by and finally Akiba decides to conduct its first festival to spice things up and get a little life back in the city. The festival starts in full flow and everyone seems to enjoy it, while Shiro as usual locks himself up with his paperwork and tries to skip the festival as much as possible, while spending his time talking to Akatsuki about their lives and their goals, and through this they come closer and start developing feelings for each other, while Mino the homewrecker, who also is in love with Shiro, witnesses this development and starts feeling sad about it. The next day of the festival starts as expected, while Mino sucks up her feelings and Akatsuki finds ways to be near Shiro at all times. While walking around the stalls with Akatsuki, Shiro notices that the place is getting rowdy as the NPCs are getting aggressive towards the adventurers, and one of them even tries to punch Shiro, but he blocks the punch with a finger and the NPCs simply walk away. Meanwhile, to distract herself from Shiro, Mino ends up helping Shin with his paperwork, as a lot of new people have been coming to Akiba recently for work, and notices that there are many major flaws in the paperwork that look intentional and planned. Shiro immediately gets worried about it and sends Akatsuki to find out about the current state of security, as he thinks that Akiba is getting attacked. He quickly runs back to the council room where alongside Henry he starts trying to figure out the reason behind this weird series of problems that they have been encountering. There have been issues where people have ordered something but are receiving something else, their baggage is getting lost, and they are unable to get refunds no matter how long they stand. Meanwhile, the princess is organizing a small feast for Lord Mal, a nobleman of a different area who is coming to Akiba to create a treaty with both Eastal and the council, but the princess is extremely worried because he is known to be very unpredictable and rude. Back at the council, Shiro gets the report that Lord Mal has arrived in the city surrounded by a bunch of bodyguards. He believes that this lord might be behind this series of problems, as he is trying to make people hate the council for being incompetent. According to him, the Lord wants to ruin the relationship between Eastal and Akiba so they can create some treaties that benefit him the most. Henry asks whether they should shut down the festival, but Shiro advises her not to, as the Lord wants that to happen so that he can say the council is totally useless and is filled with imbeciles. He immediately contacts Now, who is having fun on the streets, and tells him to keep an eye on the surroundings and to make sure that no new conflicts arise. Back at Shin's workshop, the load of paperwork is being insane, but Mino takes command and starts dealing with this problem at supersonic speed, sorting out the complaints and dealing with the ever-rising pile of documents that she has to sort out. Meanwhile, Toya, who is trying to control the situation at the customer care booth, is unable to do anything because of the insane line of people wanting to get their problems solved. Back at the council, Shiro is stressing over the map and the areas where these problems are being created because he cannot find a pattern behind these problems, and even when Henry informs him of a broken carriage that is blocking the road, he still can't understand why it could be happening or what's the reason for choosing that particular road. Back in the festival, the NPCs are spreading rumors that the council is trying to rip people off like the Indian scam callers, but gets scared away by Isaac. Chief calls Shiro and informs him that a lot of baggage has been lost, and he thinks this is all intentional, as a lot of NPCs whose problems are resolved are still creating a big fuss and are not letting the line move, while the number of people whose stuff is lost is increasing. Alongside that, the NPCs are blaming the adventurers for these problems. Our adventurers themselves are keyboard warriors who are not accustomed to hearing trash talk and not saying anything. Shiro is being completely overwhelmed and confused, but even Chief can't make sense of the situation, while Shiro thinks about each and every incident again and again, telling himself that there must be a pattern behind it no matter what. Suddenly, both Henry and Akatsuki tell Shiro that two more problems have arose, as a lot of pizza have been delivered to a diabetic person's doorstep, and a bunch of people pissed inside a pool. That's when it hits Shiro that there is absolutely no pattern to these incidents, and some low-life scum without a working brain is improvising all these things. The problem is that Shiro cannot think like that, as he is very analytical, so it is almost impossible for him to deal with randomness. He ends up going to a lake for some alone time to relax when Suji and his entourage arrives, telling him that they just had a bunch of free cake that was delivered at some random fatty's home. Shiro realizes that this is the key to solving this problem, as only a brain-dead person can win against a mindless idiot, and tells him to take command of the situation and just do whatever he feels like. Meanwhile, back at the party, the princess expresses her gratitude towards the adventurers, who are happy with the feat pics and tell her not to worry, and while she was worrying about the storage problem, Lord Mal enters the room surrounded by his guards and goes straight up to the princess and ends up insulting her a bit. This no-nose Voldemort-looking idiot tells the princess that they are noblemen and they shouldn't be occupying the same room as lowly adventurers. One of the adventurers tells him to chill out and enjoy, but the guards knock him to the ground immediately. The adventurers seem to get angry, but one of the maids apologizes while the princess tries to him while he smells her hair like my uncle used to do when I was young. The adventurers seem to get pissed off while the guards provoke them even more, but the princess signals them not to do anything. Voldemort takes the glass and pours all the wine outside while insulting Akiba and Eastel as well. Back in the city, the problem is getting resolved slowly as Suji and his entourage of girls are seducing people left and right, which is making them forget about their problems. Suddenly, Shiro gets the message that there has been some problems back at the party, so he tells Chief to take the command over here while he tries to find a way to solve the other problems. Meanwhile, in the party, Voldemort is getting mad at the princess for not preparing sufficient storage for all the things that he has brought, while the princess starts getting overwhelmed. Thankfully, at the last moment, Shiro arrives and decides to deal with Voldemort himself. While Voldemort looks at Shiro, even the nerd and Brock arrive at the meeting and tell him that they are the members of the council who are representing Akiba right now. Shiro tells Voldemort that he heard there were some problems regarding a letter that was sent to Princess about preparing storage for food and spices, which the princess never received, and Voldemort replies that the princess is useless and didn't prepare for anything. The nerd walks up and shows him a letter that was crafted by Shiro and tells the Lord that the council received the letter and has prepared for everything. The Lord, however, says that according to the information he has, there is not enough storage capacity in the warehouses of Akiba, but Brock walks up and claims that his merchant warehouse has more than enough capacity to store everything and is even ready to lend carts to transport the goods. Voldemort starts getting flustered as Shiro already knew that the Lord sent no letters, nor did he bring any food that could get spoiled, and it was all a strategy to make the princess feel bad. The Lord immediately walks away to his ship as he wants some fresh air, while Shiro and the rest decide to end the festival with a bang and have a lot of concerts and fireworks that entertain the entire player base, ending the festival with failing the Lord's plan as well as making everyone else happy. In the evening, he goes on to sit and have dinner with Mino, who makes him realize that the Lord cannot be the mastermind, so he goes ahead to investigate and finds the woman who he saw once in the castle in Eastel. He immediately recognizes her aura and tells her to reveal her true colors, so the woman simply removes her makeup and becomes an even better-looking furry. She explains that this entire plan was crafted by her to somehow get Shiro in her guild, as in the real world, she was always overlooked because she was a TikToker, so she started playing games and even their people would make fun of her. One day, she met Shiro, who didn't care about her TikTok account and even called her talented. Ever since that day, she has been thirsting over him and even took control of an entire continent so that she can somehow manage to make everyone hate Shiro and Akiba, which will force him to leave, and during his vulnerable moment, she will make him fall in love. She walks over to him and starts touching him before telling him to leave Akiba and come with her, as she loves him very much, but Shiro bitch slaps her away and tells her that he's Riz King and a bunch of girls are already simping for him. The furry gets mad and leaves while Shiro returns to his guild and has a heartwarming conversation while Toya and Mino tell them how much they have learned from him. Now tells him that they will always support him as they enjoy their time of peace, knowing that they need to somehow beat the game and get out of it one day. That's it for this video. Make sure to like and subscribe for part 2 and watch this next video on screen.